Sounds, camera, action with inspiring leaders. Today's episode is titled From Chalkboard to Career Shifts: Why Teachers Are Changing Profession. It's a topic that's becoming more relevant than ever, as many educators around the world are rethinking their roles, exploring new opportunities, and asking some important questions about purpose, growth, and balance. To dive into this conversation, we are joined by Mr. Sam Monet from Bora Education in Lisbon. Sam is an experienced educator and is leader who has worked closely with teachers across different stages of their career. With a strong understanding of the challenges and opportunities in education, Sam brings valuable insight into why so many teachers are considering a shift and what that really means for the future of the profession. Sam, it's great to have you with us today.
Great to be here, Vinny. Thank you so much for having me.
To start us off, tell us about you and your journey in education.
Well, my journey started back in 2012 when I decided to become a teacher. I never wanted to become a teacher. I always had a dream of being a soldier and following in my dad's footsteps, but I couldn't end up doing that for medical reasons. And it meant that I was sort of pushed into the education sector because my mum was a teacher. And I really struggled at the start of my teaching career. I felt very anxious and very overwhelmed in my personal life, and that then exaggerated into my professional life. And I really struggled in the early days of my teaching career with anxiety, insomnia, and it got to the point where I was taking time off school, and I just really didn't feel myself. So my teaching career started in quite a tough point.
And when you decided to change your career, I know that was the burnout the reason, work overload. What was the actual reason you decided to move to coaching?
Yeah, there's a few things. I think I went through a real struggle. Like I was taking time off school, and I had a breakdown in front of a group of students where I was physically like I was crying in front of this group of 16-year-olds, and it was a point of when I realized I was at the bottom of the mountain and I really wasn't okay. And one of my friends said, why don't you speak to this guy? I know he's a coach. And it was the 23rd of April 2015, because I remember circling the date. I had one of those big, huge academic wall calendars, and I circled the date because I found it really transformational. He asked me questions. He listened to me. He helped me express and not suppress. I was 24 at the time, and it was just this huge release. And I went back into school and became a much better teacher. Fell in love with the job of teaching, and I taught history for the next 2 to 3 years. But then I started to see lots of students that were struggling with anxiety, low level mental health, motivation, not feeling good enough. And I just felt as a teacher, I didn't have the skills to help them. But also, I was just so frustrated with the system, not being able to support these kids. So that's when I trained to coach in 2017 while I was still teaching. And that was my first journey into something outside of traditional classroom teaching.
So you started as a teacher in 2012, and 2017 you were still teaching, right? And you started your coaching side by side.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. And you were doing with students as well as with teachers, or only with student initially?
Yeah, it started off with, like most people that get into these kind of businesses or start these businesses, they come from their own place of pain, right? Like there has to be a moment of, and for me, I had that moment. I was so anxious and down and overwhelmed. Coaching helped me. So then I was like, well, I can help students with this. So
Exactly.
yeah, became fully qualified in 2017, and then I started coaching students in my classroom, in workshops. And there was one moment
Wow.
where I coached a student. He was 12 years old, and he just had some really big insights. And what I love about the coaching space is that it's all on the student coming up with their own solutions. Anyway, we had a great session, and he really found it valuable. And I was driving home down this road. I lived in a town called Milton Keynes at the time, and it was a really bright summer's day. And I just got hit with this like life's purpose, and I just started crying again. But like, unlike the tears of
Oh,
pain and anxiety, it was like purpose. It's like this is what I want to do. This is what I'm on. This is what I feel aligned with. And I'd already made up my mind to leave teaching that year, so I knew
that
2017.
was kind of a turning point for you in your career, right? Then when you decided to.
Yeah, I'd already decided to leave before I even went back. So I started training in the spring of 2017. That course went all
Okay.
the way through until October. So going back into that academic year, I knew I was going to leave, which I didn't tell anyone, obviously, at school, but I did feel this sense of freedom already. And then I think I sold a coaching package or a session for like £40, and it felt like I've achieved everything. And in that moment, and then yeah, left formal classroom teaching in 2018.
Oh, that's nice. And from your experiences, what are the biggest reasons teachers are leaving the classroom today?
Well, typically it's the amount of work, the workload, and that's always been the case. But interestingly, behavior is also a really big one at the moment.
One
And
of the reasons.
what we talk about in Bora education is our tagline is making education feel human again, and helping teachers reconnect with themselves, but how to connect with their students on a deeper level. And that's a real big reason. So workload and behavior, and also pay is usually cited as well. Um, But it's nothing new. Teachers leaving the profession is nothing new. Like in the UK, typically the number is 40,000 teachers leave and 40,000 teachers then enter the profession each year. The challenge really since the end of COVID has been that not enough teachers are going to
True.
the top. So we have this massive recruitment and retention crisis in
True.
education.
And you travel a lot to provide this coaching to different schools because I've seen some of your amazing work you have put on social media. So, when you meet the teachers, when you meet the staff, you meet the students, what do you think, what challenges they share with you from their personal stories? Every child has their own story. Same with teachers. Teachers have their own stories to tell you. So, tell us some of the experiences they might have shared with you to understand. Maybe your journey will, relate to someone else.
Yeah, when I started, the business has been in three sections really. It was student coaching, so coaching kids one on one, and then teacher training is the second stage, and then this last stage has been sort of a bit of everything: school festivals, coaching, training is the Bora education side. Um, but I remember when I really first started working as a coach, I had a really tough moment, and it was with a student, and I was in a coffee shop in Milton Keynes, and all the business was one on one coaching kids. And the student I was meeting for the first time was 14. His name was James. And interestingly, both parents turned up to this session. It's usually rare. Usually the mum, for whatever reason, the mum would typically bring the student along,
Mm-mm.
but both parents were here. And the mum looked emotional, but was okay. The dad was just like crying his eyes out, which was obviously quite confronting. And we put James over into the coffee shop, and I go and speak to the parents, like, what's going on? And they open up and they share they'd found James on top of a bridge in Milton Keynes that
My
morning.
God.
He'd left to go to school, and he had two paths to choose, literally. One was to go to school, the other one was to go to the bridge. And he was standing on top of the bridge, was about to take his own life.
My God.
And that's obviously quite a big thing to hear as a coach. And I'm obviously not a qualified psychotherapist or anything like that. Luckily, he texted his parents and they brought him down. But I met him that day, and it was really quite a tough story. And it was really because he felt so let down by the system. He was really struggling with his mental health. He had counselling in school, but that wasn't helping. He was not going to school, and he just felt more and more frustrated. And that was his way he sought out. So that's a massive pain that I see in a lot of students is they don't necessarily have the support they need to be able to express themselves or move through what they're feeling. But in that moment, we actually just sat in silence, I think, for like 15 minutes. And then eventually he started to
I
share
can imagine.
share and open up. And I've done a bit of training in being a grief recovery counselor. So we did some work like talking about forgiveness, and I actually hugged him in that session, which I don't typically do. But
Mm.
the great thing about that story was because I then coached him for 9 sessions, and he was also getting support with a psychotherapist and more medical support for his suicidal ideation. But then I ran an event in London a few months after this, and James was one of the speakers. And there was, imagine a room of 60 adults, mainly teachers, and this 14-year-old boy is at the front, and he's delivering a talk about his experiences. And the whole room were in, floods of tears.
Yeah.
Really moving story. And my mum was in the audience this day, which I never used to like them coming to my events, my parents, but they came to this one. And she came up to me and hugged me at the end, and she said, if the business fails tomorrow, it's been a success for that one student. And
Oh
that's
my
really
God,
what it's
that's
about. Like
huge.
coaching is that entry level point to help teachers and students express themselves. It's non-judgmental. It's not too much focused on the past. It's just in the moment and then imagining the future.
Mm,
And that's what James really liked. It wasn't like, okay, let's talk about obviously the past is important. He's got trauma he needs to talk through. But actually, in the moment of coming
true.
back into school, it's just the present. And that's where the sweet spot is.
Was it a pressure that he was facing in the school when he was talking about to you, or was it a peer pressure or teachers? Like what the students are feeling these days? It's so difficult to understand what, because social media has taken plays a huge role in all this. So we always talk about the challenges teachers face, but we fail to understand what a child is also feeling, because the world is changing so much.
Oh, it's super tough to be a student at the moment. And a great book that I always recommend is Anxious Generation by Michael Hout. And it's a really interesting book because the studies that are shown in this book, typically, I'm going to summarize them, but they look at lots of past generations around self-harm, anxiety, depression rates, whatever. And basically throughout the whole all these last generations, it's been fairly steady. And then it hits 2012 on these graphs, and the graphs just go and they just shoot up. And 2012 was high-speed internet, apps, and the smartphone. So it all came together. And the book is titled Anxious Generation because that's what these students are going through. They're going through something that's so unprecedented, being the guinea pigs, that constant comparison, that fact of
So,
the cyberbullying experience and just never really feeling enough. And I was at school, I'm born in 1991, and I was always comparing myself to my peers at school. And I didn't feel good enough at the time. I was like, I wasn't the smartest kid for sure. And I was always out, I was like, oh, I wish I was like this guy or this guy. But then you obviously hand this, addictive device and it just ramps everything up. And I really think it's a tough place for students at the moment. And obviously, the changes we're seeing with AI and things like this in the classroom
mm.
is really transforming education at a fast pace.
And that do reflect how teachers are also teaching in the school. Like if we come back and talk about teachers, what challenges in the education system are pushing teachers reconsider their careers? What do you think? What are the challenges teachers are facing?
The amount I go into schools a lot, right? And I train teachers, and I'll always have one or two of them come up to me at the end and say, how did you do it? I really want to leave. Um, and a lot of them, it's a real shame. Like they leave. One teacher I worked with actually all the way when I was a teacher myself, and she did another 5 years. She did 10 years. She was head of sixth form, which is a pretty good like glass ceiling. She was about in her early 30s. It was a really good achievement. She was a phenomenal teacher, and she quit. And she quit, and she took a £20,000 pay cut to work in London in recruitment. And I remember the day I spoke to her about this, and she said, and I get to work from home 1 day a week. And it was like she'd won the lottery, because we don't have that freedom in the
Mm,
classroom. You can't just like, really work remotely, although there's more schools doing this kind of thing because the students can have freedom. But I think that's a big thing. You've got like people finishing university now and their friends are working from home a few days a week at least. They're on better
true,
money
true.
and the profession really has been dragged through the mud, and it really hurts me because teaching is the profession that teaches all other professions.
Mm,
You know, they are.
true.
I see teachers at the high level as doctors, and we view doctors very like in great esteem, but we view teachers almost as childminders or care or carers for their kids. Like these are experts in their field, and they're not respected, and I don't think they're respected enough by society and parents as a whole.
I agree with you 100%. So, are teachers feeling undervalued, or it is more about workload and burnout?
I think it all flows in. I mean, there's definitely that you want to feel valued in your profession. You want to feel like you're doing a good job, but we don't do a great job of that in teaching as well. Like whenever people get reviewed or when they have observations in their lessons, it's always like, need to improve this, need to improve this, need to improve this. It's never good enough, never good enough.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, for me, if I look back on my reasons I left was, yeah, freedom was a big thing. I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to change the mental health support. I got really frustrated by like inputting random data into, we're obsessed with like data capture. It's just like, why am I doing this? Like, what is the actual purpose of this?
So,
And we just there's so many, and what I do with teachers and students really is a sticking plaster. I'll admit it. It is a sticking plaster. It's not dealing with the cause. It's dealing with the surface level symptom. Going back to COVID, we taught 4 topics before COVID at GCC history. So 4 different topics we had to teach. During the lockdowns, we had to teach 3. So straight away, like we've reduced the curriculum. Now that might not
exactly.
transform someone's mental health, but it reduces the pressure, reduces the workload. The students can take a bit more time. So all I'm saying is like that's a great example of one thing we can do straight away will be to trim down a little bit the amount we've got to teach. So we've got a bit more, even a smidge more time to breathe.
So, how can schools better support teachers to stay in the profession? What school needs to do different?
Yeah, it's a really great question. Um, when we say schools here, because schools, can't just change the curriculum. That was an example I just shared of like a
Sure.
bigger policy, but um, I mean, it's what I've seen in the work that I do. I think it's delivering really high quality professional development. And I look at it as a teacher as not just the classroom teacher. We look at them holistically as the human being, the person that goes back to their families, has got their own challenges,
Mm,
that is waking up at night with, different situations swirling through their brain, their own kids, their own parents, their own, all the stuff we deal with.
exactly.
And it's helping the teacher become more resilient, understand themselves on a deeper level, connect with their values, have honest conversations, and then also learn the skills to do that with the students. And that's really the work that we do here at the Bora Education. But in the training part, is yeah, we take teachers through some coach training, but it's so much more than that. It's if you imagine an iceberg, the coach training is like the tip of the iceberg. The teachers are learning new skills and tools to help the students. Like that's cool, really, really useful. But then underneath, you know, becoming better partners, better friends, understanding who they are, what they
True.
really want. The amount of times I do some surface level stuff for teachers, training wise. An example might be that they have different categories of their life, and I ask them to score their different categories out of 10, based on how happy, successful, and confident they feel. Quite a surface level exercise.
Mm-mm.
And time again, it will just be like super triggering. And triggering in an interesting way because it's nothing too deep, but it's because they've paused for the first time in maybe even years and thought,
Mhm.
what's actually going on for me? And also, what do I actually want? And that can be really, really eye opening for teachers. So, yeah, better quality professional development, seeing them as people, helping them personally and professionally, and giving them tools to thrive.
Great. When we talk about education, and I think you might have seen how education have changed over the years. When we were in schools and how school is looking right now when comes to education, I believe students have more knowledge than teachers because of social media, because of their research work. So when we look at all these factors, what advice would you give to a teacher who is thinking about leaving?
What advice would I give to a teacher who's thinking about leaving? It's always an interesting question to answer this because I always answer it in two parts really. Because I was the teacher that left, and I left, but I didn't leave. I've still been working with students. I've always worked with schools and helping teachers and that kind of thing. But my answer is to that really is if you want to leave, you do have a range of skills and talents that you can apply to different situations, different roles. And I come into some schools and I feel like a lot of teachers, they do feel trapped. They've all they've known. They've been a teacher their whole lives. And I've given some talks sometimes, and the energy in the room is just like super down and super negative. And I say this really from a place of love
Mm,
because I'm not judging. I don't want to judge them because it is such a hard job and you can sometimes see there's no way
true.
out. But ultimately, like you have such an important role to play as a teacher, and if you're not feeling it, like you can be brave, and there are other options. There's a great quote in a book called The Alchemist, which is you never know where one action step will take you.
Oh, wow, I love that.
And I left teaching in 2018 literally to run a student coaching business in a small town in England. And now I live in Portugal and I travel around the world training teachers and running festivals for schools. And I believe as a teacher, there's so many skills you've learned that other people can't do. Like you are literally like the ultimate multitasker, and so many people just get in the mindset that they can't do it. But the frustrating thing I think is that the teacher I shared earlier that had been there 10 years and then left to go and work in recruitment, like she was such a good teacher, man. And she was so good at working with young people. And ultimately, the education system has lost a good one, you know? Um,
Mm,
but I think if you are feeling like under the pressure from the education system and things and you're not really firing or feeling the love for it, do have some honest conversations about what you really want. But when I went through my own coaching and therapy and counseling, when I was really struggling as a teacher, like it just transformed things for me. And I had all this energy again and I found my spark back because I had that ability to share and realize I actually really loved this and I gave it my best. So I think, and it doesn't just go for teachers, but it's easy to look externally, right? From like the archetype or the character of a victim, like blaming the system, blaming other people, blaming this. But if you can bring it back on yourself and take responsibility and become the creator, like I have options, I can decide, I can choose, and actually taking full responsibility for what you want and not letting the externals happen, but coming from an in place of
true.
internal, satisfaction, what you want, then that's a different mindset to come from, coming from the victim to the creator, because there are possibilities out there. And you don't have to do this if you don't want to. You can achieve something else.
Exactly. You have traveled a lot, right? For the coaching to different countries. Is the culture and the school leadership is different when you walk into the school? Can you read the energies, how the atmosphere is? Does that has to do anything with the teachers, how they're feeling in that particular school? Because I am a great believer of energies
Yeah.
and the vibes. And I think when you walk into the room, you can feel that energy, you can feel the vibes in the room, and accordingly, you can tell where this conversation is going or where the meeting is going, you know?
Mm.
What do you have to say about that? Because you travel a lot in schools.
Yeah, it's we're really good at humans, aren't we? As humans, of picking up on those vibes and signals. Those first impressions. When you meet anyone, you make some assumptions
Exactly.
about that
Yeah.
person. You make assumptions, but um, and it's the same in schools. I would go to a lot of new international schools. They're very, very like nice, shiny buildings. They look like spaceships. Some of them, they're like super modern. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say the vibes are there. And a great building doesn't necessarily mean a great culture. And a lot of these schools that are being
Exactly.
being built, we've got 36 here in Lisbon. There's over 200 in Dubai, international schools, probably lots more than that. So the schools get built very fast by these big educational companies, businesses. But I see that a lot of the time, there's little small things they miss, and a lot of teachers actually don't feel that supported compared to they've got the big fancy building and this is what we're about, but a lot of these new schools forget the culture and they forget how to build the culture and how to make staff feel comfortable and get everyone on the same page. And you pick up on it. Yeah, some schools you walk in, you're like, oh, the vibes are really cool here, I like it. And then some, it's just like, it just feels a bit stale, like a bit sort of,
Yeah.
a bit walking on eggshells.
And I think you can, when you walk into such schools, you can actually look at the teachers and you can feel that how are they happy in that school or not, or what they're feeling, what the culture is about. And I think it has to do so much. Like I've been a teacher and the leader, and I can say that I don't mind working hard if the leader knows how to communicate. It's all about the conversation we are having because it's the world we have to work hard. You pick any profession, you have to give your 100%, your heart and soul to it. But I believe it's all about how we are communicating. Even if it's a problem in the classroom with a child, how it's going to a leader and how a leader is communicating with the teacher, having a conversation, that's play a huge role if teacher likes the profession or not. Like for me, if you ask me, like if I'm working in an organization and if I don't like my leader, I cannot work. I have to like my leader to work with him or her. And that's play a huge role, not only in teaching, I believe in any profession.
Mm.
So, like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I met an amazing leader actually in a school in Jaipur in Rajasthan.
Ah, India, you were in India. Okay.
Yeah, that's actually part of my. I'm hopefully going to go back in November because
Hmm.
I want to film a documentary called Education Makeover.
Ah,
I,
what's the name of the school there?
duh, 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 duh. One with
It's
the
okay.
number.
It's I know
Don't worry
it's
about it. But it was a really eye-opening experience. I went to one school that was
hmm.
in the outskirts of Jaipur, and it was in a woman's house. You know, her classroom was her bedroom, and there was another big room. And the aim for this year is to go back there and run a documentary or film a documentary called Education Makeover. Because
That's beautiful.
I thought they just wanted, you know, quite ignorantly of me, I thought they just wanted money, but they really want teacher training and resources. So the aim is we're going to go to the school, you know, train all the teachers really intensely just for a week, and they're quite early years, so it might be like some phonics or other little I don't know, bits of English, things like that. And then we'll maybe do the school up a little bit more, you know, paint it or build some things, and then we're going to take the kids out for an amazing adventure, and then film the whole thing. But going back to the vibes, like I went to another school in Jaipur, which is a government school, just in some village, and there was one teacher for 100 students, and
Oh, yeah.
the building was crumbling down. There's no electricity, and the classrooms are filled with the kids, but there's no one to teach them. And I walked in and just read them a story, I think, and they like went they went nuts. They were like so enthusiastic to learn. And then a lot of the students I work with in these 25,000 euro a year schools, you know, a lot of the time they're very, very like apathetic and just a bit flat sometimes. I see these kids, you know, they've had everything and they're a bit disillusioned. But then I'm in India, like in this village, and you know, these kids are desperate to learn, but they've got no teachers. And it was a really powerful moment of why I do what I do, and I really want to go back. And I know you can't change the world, but like
Of course.
the person who begins by moving a mountain starts by carrying away a small stone. And if
True.
I could go back and just help this one school in Jaipur like this year, it'd be really, really cool.
That's nice. That's amazing. So let's come back to the teachers now.